All right. So, you know, sometimes it's good to have your own ninja moment. So that was my ninja moment. By the way, ah, it seems I'm growing too big. I'm tearing my clothes now. So you're welcome to this video series. It wouldn't be a series this time around. It would be one video merged into one place. So we'll be talking about Next.js, NextAuth. Um, of course, we'll be using Prisma and Postgres. These are tools that I'll be using to build the application I want to build today. So what I want to do today is to show you how to build an authentication application in Next.js. But I will not just be doing that with the app router, which is the new introduction in the Next 13. I'll compare it with Next.js pages router. So whether you are new to Next.js or you've been there in Next.js but want to learn how to do your authentication with Next.js, it doesn't matter. We'll looking into all of that. You have something to learn. Now, authentication is something that is very difficult to handle in most cases, but NextAuth has made it easy for us to just integrate the authentication that other big companies like Google, Facebook, GitHub, and many providers like that already have. So you can now leave the authentication to them while you focus on building new features into your application. And what I want to do today is to introduce you to these things so that you can get up to speed, start building your own personal project and things like that. So what the first thing we need to do is to create a boilerplate. We'll create two. One of them will have the pages router, and the second one will have the auth router. So let me get my face off your face. I'll just drag this a little bit. Yeah, let me get this to the side. All right, so that you can see my screen. All right, some of the things we'll be using, like I mentioned, is the NextAuth.js. It does everything authentication and provides us with a lot of documentation right here. So I told you about using different organizations like Google, like Facebook, GitHub, and many of them. So these are the many providers that they have given us. So you can use any of these people, any of this organization, and integrate them. And of course, there are directions on how to do these things here. Then, of course, Next.js is the main thing we are building upon. And then if you notice in the docs, we now have the app router and the pages router. You can switch the documentation to suit your need. So either of them will work fine. And I'll be showing you the way to handle authentication using NextAuth in both of them. We'll be using Prisma. Prisma basically help us to manage databases. It could work with any kind of database, but I'll be using Postgres in this case. You can just hit the get started button here and you get started. You can also check out Postgres at postgresql.org to learn more about Postgres and stuff like that. So we have a lot to learn, and we are focusing basically on authentication. So this is just the basic introduction, and we'll be jumping right in a moment. So first things first, we want to create the two boilerplates. You just come down to installation and copy this command, get to your terminal, and I'll do my work in the documents directory. You can choose anywhere. So all right, first of all, I need to create a folder. I want everything that I'll be doing today to be in one folder, so make dir Next.js taught vid, just in case I have something like that already. I'll hit enter, and then I'll change my directory into that so that I will do everything inside of that. So cd, yes. Now I can paste the command I copied, npx create next app at latest. Hit enter, and that should start yeah, start building. But and on the other hand, let me just end this so that I would just open this folder in VS Code. Yes, yeah, something like this. I want to be able to build the two applications concurrently, and I want you to be able to see everything I'm doing from one screen. So VS Code is the best option. So open the terminal down here, and what I would do now is to paste the command and then start. I can also open a second terminal, paste the same command and start. Then in each of them, I will name each of these projects based on what we want to do. So one of them would be like page router auth, and the other one would be app router auth, something like that. So like I said, one of them will be page router auth. Yes. So you hit we'll not be using TypeScript, so no. ESLint, no. Tailwind, no. Wouldn't be needing any of this, no. This is the page router, so for the app router we'd say no, and finally no. So this will start installation. So go back to the next terminal. So we will now do the app router here. So this is app router auth. Hit enter. No TypeScript, no ESLint, no Tailwind, no source folder, and yes, we want to use the app router here. So yes, and no, we don't need the import alias. So everything will start installing. So while this is installing, like I told you, we want to hand over our authentication to these big companies or big organizations that are already established. For this tutorial, we'll be using Google, we'll be using GitHub, and we'll be using email, these three providers, to demonstrate how you can hand over your authentication to these companies while you sit back and build on other features that are not existing anywhere. After all, why should you reinvent the wheel when it is already there? There's so many things to build, so let's do this. So for us to be able to use these organizations, we need to get certain credentials from them, which is usually the client ID and the client secret for each of them. So let's go back to our browser here. The first one we want to get is for say GitHub. So I'll show you how to get it for GitHub. So when you get to GitHub, you should be logged in. I'm already logged in here. So I'll show you the steps you need to follow in order for you to get your client secrets and your client ID. So come to your profile picture here, click on it, and scroll down here. You click on settings. Then from settings, you come to this side, scroll down, and you come to developer settings. In the developer settings, you see GitHub apps, OAuth apps. We want the OAuth apps, so we click on it. Now I already have an app that I've created here, but if you've not created at all, you see a button here asking you to create one, like something like what you have here under the GitHub apps when we opened it, something like this. So there's a button here. So similarly, in this one, we'll just click on new OAuth app. Yeah. All right. So I'll just call this NextAuth thoughts, something like that would work. Then for the home URL, we'll be working in a local environment. So we just take the localhost 3000. Then the app description is optional. Then for the authorization callback, now this is where the authentication will be completed. So we need to give them like a route where they should go through and get whatsoever details that they want. So once you are done with this, you click on register application, and that creates your client ID and the client secret. Now for you to generate your client secret, just click on the generate button there, and it will give you this secret here. Then you need to save it somewhere. We'll be using it in a bit, but for you to understand what we're talking about, just come down to these providers here in NextAuth documentation. Come down to providers and go to GitHub. We just did what we did now for GitHub. And so look at here, it is asking for client ID, and then the client ID will be saved as GitHub ID and client secret as GitHub secret. It is same thing for Google. When you come down here, you see it's asking for client ID and it will be saved as client Google client ID, and the client secret as Google client secret, something like that. So these are the things we just need. Once you have these two, we are good to go for most of the providers we have here. So now I've shown you how to get your client ID and client secret for for GitHub. So the next one we want to do now is for Google. We want to get the client ID and client secret for Google. For you to do that, you go to console or cloud.google.com. That's where you need to go, and you need to be logged in. Like I am already logged in here. Once you get to this page, which is like the dashboard, click on the APIs and services here under the quick access. Under the quick access menu, you can also find it from around here if you wish. But why should I go there when I have the quick access here? So click on it, API and services. Now, something you'll notice is I already have a project here that I've created. So since I already have a project here, when I come to credentials and click on it, I can just go straight to create credentials without fixing my OAuth consent screen. But let's say I have a new project. I have not configured the consent screen. First off, I'll need to configure that consent screen. So for example, this one can be NextAuth taught, short for tutorial. Create. Okay. I think I'm not supposed to use underscore NextAuth taught. You create, and that creates the new organization. Now I will select the project that I just created for the switch to happen. So you can also switch it from here. Want to switch it to this, so switch to this NextAuth taught. Now you notice that there is nothing here, unlike the other one where we have something already here in the Auth 2.0 client ID. So what we'll now do is click on the create credentials, come to Auth client ID, and because it's new, it will ask us to configure the consent screen. So click on it, click on external when you get to this screen, which is the OAuth consent screen. Click on external and then click create. Here it asks for app name, so it can just be NextAuth, maybe tutorial. Yeah, that could be anything. I'll pick an email for support email, and I'll pick the same email for the developer contact. It doesn't really matter, so I'll just copy it here and paste it in. By the way, this everything I'm using in this tutorial are basically dummy. They are not real or usable data. For example, this email is just a test email I created, so it doesn't really matter. I could be exposing my keys to you because I wouldn't be needing them after this tutorial, so you do well not to expose your keys. So click on save and continue, and now in the scopes also click on save and continue. Also here click on save and continue. That takes you to the summary, and then click on back to dashboard. So we now have our consent screen well configured. Now back to the credentials. Our consent screen is already configured. So when we come back to these credentials and hit on OAuth client ID, it should now take us straight to the type of application we want to create. And we want to take the web application because that's what we are creating. Then give it a name too. It could be any name. I just think having NextAuth taught makes more sense. So when you come down here, you add a URI. So same thing as what we did here for GitHub. We added the home page URL, that is the base page URL. So copy this too and come here and paste it. Make sure you remove the / at the end. This wouldn't be accepted here. Then we now add a redirect URL. This is where the authentication will be completed. So also come here, copy what you have here. Every of the provider are similar to each other, so the difference is not much. Paste it down here, and now we have our authorized JavaScript origin and the redirect URLs or URIs. Now create it. As soon as you create it, it should now give you the details that we are looking for. So this is now the client ID, which in this case will be Google Client ID. Then this is the client secrets, which in this case will be the Google Client secrets. How awesome. So in this way, you'll be getting the basic details that you need in order for you to connect or give authorization to these companies to help you do your authentication. And the good thing is that this is free. Nobody's charging you for anything. You could also download the JSON file here that contains all these details, but I don't need it, so I'll just copy these ones. Make sure you have this saved somewhere. We'll be pasting them in an environment file in a bit once we are done. Now the final provider I want to use is the email provider. Now this could be any email, as long as the email provider gives us access to SMTP services. So SMTP services basically help you to use email address remotely from your own application, something like that. Now for this, it could be done in any of these two ways, either in this pattern, which is more like a URL, or it could also take this form, this other form, where you are required to have your email server host, your email server port, email server user, email server password, and email from. So the only thing that is a little tricky here is the password. So we'll begin with that, after which I'll show you what is the value for all these other ones. I'll be showing you everything in a bit. So I'll be demonstrating it here too. You need to be logged into your Gmail account. So like I told you, this is just for demonstration purposes. I don't have any emails here, so I could be exposing the passwords to you. It doesn't really matter. Now for you to get the password that you'll be using, you need to come here, click on your profile picture here if you have a picture, or maybe the letter. Click on manage your Google account. Click on it. It takes you to another page. Then on this page, click on security. Click on security. And then if you already have your 2FA or your two-factor authentication verification set up, you should have it up here or anywhere here in the list, but up here usually. But if you do not have your 2FA set up, please, you need to set it up for you to be able to use this service. So once you have it set up already, click on it. It will now open the page where all your passwords are. So for this, I'll just log in. It's required that you put in your password because, for security purposes, so that somebody else don't access it. It's very tricky. So you hit next, and that should redirect us to our 2FA page. Now scroll down and you see app passwords. Click on app password. Let me get this to the side here. All right, click on app password. Now you notice that I already have two passwords created. You could choose to delete them or whatever, but I'll just create another one. Let me make sure you're seeing what I'm doing. So come down here, click on select app, pick mail, then here click on choose whatever you're using. I'm using a Mac, so I'll click Mac. If you're on Windows, you pick Windows, whatever suits your need. After this, create the generate button, and it generates the password for you. Beautiful. It's a 16 character string, which is divided into 4 places. However, when using this string, there will be no spaces in between, so it will be a one string wherever you are putting it. So with this, we now have everything that we need to create authentication using email. Now back here, the host would be smtp.gmail.com. the email port should be 4462. I'll show you all of this in a bit. While the email server user is your email, your own email address, the email address that the email account where you created the password from. Then this password is a string containing that password string we just created. Where is that? Yeah, this string with no spaces between. And finally, this email from is anything you choose to call it. So sometimes you see certain email come and you see something like no reply at gmail.com. Yeah, so something like that. So your email from would be anything you choose. It could be an email that's not existing anywhere, but it's just more like where the email is coming from, something like that. All right, now let's go back to a VS Code and check. Everything should be completed now. Beautiful. All right, so we now have the page router. Now why we call this the page router, in case you are new, is because the routing is done inside of the pages directory here. Then the app router is called the app router because the routing is done inside of the app directory here. So gradually I'll show you the differences, but what I'm going to begin with is something that is common to the two of them. So what we are doing next would be installation of dependencies, setting up Prisma, setting up NextAuth, creating models, basically getting started. Everything we'll do next is our things that are common to both the app router and the pages router. So stick with me, we'll be there in a bit. Yeah, so let's kill the terminals. I've killed this terminal. So I want to open individual terminals for each of these projects. We have the app router, remember, and the page router. So we start with the page router, open it in an integrated terminal. And then first thing first, we want to install npm, we want to install dependencies, we want to install NextAuth, we want to install Prisma, we want to install we want to install an adapter. So it's NextAuth Prisma adapter, NextAuth /Prisma adapter. All these are in the documentation, so you don't have to cram them or have them offset. So hit enter for the installation to start, and you can do this for both of them at the same time. So you can just copy and install it in the app router if you're starting with the page router. Of course, I'm starting with the page router. Remember, what I'm doing at this point is something that is common for both of them. So whatever we do in the page router, be sure that you can do it in the app router before the next segment, when we'll start to handle things differently or individually, depends on the project configuration. Now after this, you should have some of these things as part of the dependencies now, like Prisma, NextAuth, and the adapter. All right, cool. We want to initialize Prisma. I am assuming that you already at least know the basics of most of these things, like Next.js, like Prisma, and maybe NextAuth. But even if you are new to NextAuth, it will be easy for you to follow. But just in case you are new to any of these, I'll link some of the documentation down there in the description. So npx Prisma init to initialize Prisma. This will create a Prisma folder and an env folder. Inside of the Prisma folder, it creates a schema.prisma file. This is where we'll create our models. Models are just a way to define how our table should look, and Prisma make it really comfortable and easy to handle all that. You should check out the documentation. Then the env file is where we put in all those, our Google secret, client secret, client ID, server details that we've gotten, and I'll be pasting my own in here. I already have them written out somewhere. So the first thing we want to do is to fill out the schema here. So this is fine like this. We are using the PostgreSQL provider as the database, and of course the client is Prisma client. Cool. Then let's paste in the model, I already have this model written somewhere. Just in case any of this sounds confusing, just check out the Prisma documentation, and you will have everything you are looking for. But I'll try to explain what's going on here, just format this a little bit. So what we are doing here is that we are creating 4 tables. One of them is the account table, the second one is the session table, and the third one is the user table, while the last one is the verification token. Now, for the verification token, it has just 3 fields where the token is a unique field. This is used to verify a user. So when a user is to be verified, there will be like a token stored here, which if everything works well, will be used to verify the user. Then we have the user table here, which will contain an ID, a name, an email verified, image. Then it will have a list of accounts that belongs to it and a list of session that is attached to it. The ID would be automatically entered. So once you create a user, you don't have to create an ID. The CUID will be run at the background and generates a unique ID for the user. Then the email must be unique. Once a user already have an email, it's not going to be accepted. So let's minimize that. And then for the session is basically saying this is amount of places a particular account or a particular user is logged in. So if a user is logged in multiple places, you should have multiple sessions for that one user. And finally, accounts is attached to providers. So if you have multiple provider with maybe one email or connected to one user, then you have multiple accounts for one user. So this is why you can have one user with multiple accounts. So that is more like a one-to-many relationship, if you understand. And I would also have all this in a GitHub repository. So I will also link that to the description so that you can easily follow up with what's going on here. Now, we now have to fill up the env file. I will also copy out what I already have and fill that out. Yeah. So I'll just copy that. I already have it on the screen here, and paste it here. Nothing here is actually new. I'll just break everything down for you. Let me get this off this face. Okay. The first thing here is the database URL or URI, depending on you. That is just a link to the database we want to use. Then the server or the server host, the email server host is smtp.gmail.com. As long as you are using Gmail as your email server, this is what you have. The email server port is 465. This is also constant. However, the email server user is your email address, so it has to be unique. And the email server password is the password we got. If you remember when we were trying to get all the credentials we need. And like I told you, no reply at tsend.com. It doesn't really matter. This is just for more like aesthetic sake. Then the Google Client ID that we got in the last segment and the Google Client secret. We also have the GitHub ID and the GitHub secret. Then we have the NextAuth secret. Now, this could be any string at all. So you could just put in any gibberish and it's fine. But say, for example, you want to get your own string, a random string without stressing yourself. I'll just show you the command to use and get a string. I'll adjust this terminal a little bit. Terminal. Let me clear here and paste this. So open SSL space RAND for random, base 6432. Just hit enter and it will give you a random string. Now this random string is used to generate tokens for you. You don't need to bother how these things work. Most of these things work under the hood. NextAuth will provide everything for you, so you don't need to bother yourself about this. And then the NextAuth URL is the index page or the home page, which is for us is localhost 3000. If we are going to production, then we have to change this to whatsoever domain name we are using, and that is it. Now for this database URL, I am using Superbase, if you notice here. So on your own too, you can check it out, and this should be 5432. I made a mistake there, although that's what you get from Superbase, but it has to be 5432 just for you not to get an error. And then save. All right, so after this we need to migrate our file. Basically what that means is we want to run this file. When we run this file, it will now automatically create a set of tables for us, and it will create certain functions that we can use when creating APIs or our endpoints for full stack application. Remember, this is Next.js, and Next.js is a combination of Node.js and React.js. So that's beautiful, that's explosive. All right, I'll just clear this and we'll say npx prisma migrate dev. Yes, you just hit enter, and it should take a bit, maybe a couple of seconds for everything to be done. So just a little patience will do. Just a little patience. All right. All right, save that, making sure everything is working fine. Okay. All right, so I'll just hit enter, and let's give it a moment. Make sure you cross check so that you don't run into bugs. So give it a moment. And something else to have in mind is if you already have tables in that database, there might be conflict. So just in case you run into an error, you might want to check your database and make sure that database is probably clear, or the data there wouldn't conflict with what you already have. I'm saying this for people who are already using NextAuth and probably trying to learn how to do it with Next13. But aside that, everything should run easily and cleanly. All right. So I think I made a mistake somewhere. Okay, I didn't hit the enter button, so give me a moment. Sorry, I thought I hit the enter button, so hit enter. Okay, it starts running. All right, it's running now. Just give it a moment. It should ask you for a name for the migration file. So you can use any name at all that suits you. Aside that, everything will run on its own and you'll be good to go. Once the migration is complete, we should have a migration file inside the migration folder inside of Prisma here. Yes. Mine is taking a little bit of time. It's probably because of the reception, but we'll just wait. Okay, good. So I can just say init. So the name of the migration will be init. So let me make a little zoom here so that I'm sure you're seeing everything. Hit enter, and that should complete in seconds. Okay, beautiful. And that completes it. Awesome, awesome. Now, something I want to introduce to you in case you don't know is that you can actually you can interact with your database straight from the browser using Prisma. So you just type in npx Prisma Studio, npx Prisma Studio, and that will open the database in your browser. So let's take the browser, open a new tab and paste this here. Beautiful. So everything here will be 0 because we don't have any user, any session, or any account, nor do we have any verification token. So back to here, we've been able to install and do some configurations for the project. Now the next thing we want to now do is to move into something that is related to just the page router, and so we'll do that in the next segment. Notice that everything we did in this segment is something that is general, so you can pause the video and do everything we've done here for the app router. I'll also do the same, and so I'll see you in the next segment in a bit. I am done setting up for the app router too. I believe you've done that. So now let's focus on the page router. Yeah, the folder here. And believe me, this is very easy. All right. So for us to do this, we will now move into the pages directory, and inside of the page directory, we'll now create a folder called Auth. So create a folder called Auth. Now inside of this folder, would create a file called it's more like a dynamic file, NextAuth, and close this square bracket .js. Yes, exactly. So that is exactly how it has to be. The square bracket has to be there. If not, it may not work as it's supposed to be. Then the first thing we want to do, as usual, is to import. We want to import Prisma, the Prisma adapter, the Prisma client, and NextAuth itself. Those are the first things to import. We'll just paste them in. I don't want to waste your time, so I have many of these things written out already. So Prisma adapter, Prisma client, and NextAuth. You see how these things work together. The next thing we want to do is to import the providers. Remember that we're using 3 organizations. The first one is Google, second one is GitHub, then the third one is email. Now, like I said, the email could be any email client or email vendor, like Mailgun, SendGrid. There's a lot of them out there, but I'm using Gmail because that's what I love to use. So I'll paste this here, and we'll have those 3. The next thing we want to do is to initialize or instantiate the Prisma client. So this Prisma client that will be imported here, we are now instantiating it so that we could just use a copy of it. And next, we want to define an export NextAuth function. So you recall that we imported NextAuth here, so we'll just export it here. Now it takes one argument, which is here, an object. So inside of this object, this is where we'll have the providers, which will be an array of objects, and then it will now have an adapter, which will be equal to Prisma adapter, and it will take the Prisma as an argument. Beautiful. Awesome. Now we are getting somewhere. Now you will recall that in here, where is here in NextAuth, in the documentation here, go to provider. We'll start with email. You notice that it follows a pattern. So the pattern is there is the provider array, then inside of it we have a particular provider. So we could have multiple provider. So for our own case, what we want here is the email provider like this. So we'll copy this, and in here we'll paste it inside of the array. So that is one. This is for email. Then we also need that of Google. So scroll down a little bit for Google, copy this, and here below the first provider you put it. Then the final one is GitHub. Recall that we already have all of these details kept somewhere. So what we are just doing now is keying in into what we already have. So make sure it's separated by a comma, paste it here, just format it a little bit. Okay, so if you notice, let's open our .env file so that we can look at it side by side. Open to side. All right, beautiful. Now I believe you're seeing everything I'm doing, so let me bring this a little bit. Now look at the email provider. What it's doing here is each provider has a function, and that function is named by that provider, kind of. So we get it. So it just follows this format. It's not like you want to redo it. So just follow the same format, but pay attention to the host. We already have the email server host here, the email server port, we have it here, the email server user, we have it here, and the email server password, sorry, we have it here. Then the email from, we have it here. The point is, we already have this instated in the env file. So this file will be basically the same for every person, and all you need to be changing is the env file. And remember, you can add more and more of this provider, like you can add Twitter, Facebook, Atlassian, Instagram, TikTok, whatsoever you think your user are used to. So this is the Google client and Google client secret, Google GitHub ID and GitHub secret. Beautiful. So we can close this off. You get what we are doing here, and just like that, I mean, just like that, we are done. That's mind-blowing, right? You might be asking, so how then do the user log in? What does the user need to do? How would they see a form, and stuff like that? Just hold on for a minute. So what you do first is run the local server. So come down here and run okay, please make sure you are in the pages, make sure that you are in the pages router folder, so that I don't mix things up. I have each of them opened in a different terminal here. So I will just end this process, and then I will do npm run dev. This starts the local server for us, and so I'll just open a new window here. Beautiful. I could actually close this. I already have some of them here, and then we'll navigate to localhost 3000, hit enter, and that would load the Next.js boilerplate for us. So now the next thing is to let our user sign in, right? So navigate to /API/auth/sign in. Now the thing going on here is where is that? The thing going on here is NextAuth has everything built in for us. So it's already created sign in, sign out, sign up, as the case may be for us. And all we need to do is just navigate to this link. So like I said, it's /API/auth/sign-in. And just like that, hit enter, and in a moment, watch what happens. Whoop, we forgot to install something. So please make sure you install Node Mailer. We forgot to install that. node mailer, and that's the error we are getting here. So let's make sure we have that installed. Node mailer helps us to handle email related stuff. So install that in both the app router folder and yeah. So let's end, and we'll do npm I node mailer, hit enter. Also do that for the app router, npm I node mailer, hit enter, and then back to the pages router auth folder. Let's run the server again, and hopefully this time around everything works fine. All right, and that is it. That is it. We have everything we asked for. Notice the three things here. So let me keep this thing side by side so that we can easily follow. And this is it. I'll shift these two side by side. Okay, push this to this side. All right. Everything is following the pattern here in this NextAuth.js file. The email provider comes first. The email provider sends in a magic email to whichever the user is, and the user has to click on the button or the verification link sent to him, after which he gets verified and logged in. And so we have it here. Now the Google provider is the second thing here, so it's down here, and we have the GitHub provider up here, and it is here. Now if you want to switch how this looks, first you could just move this up. You could just move this up here, save it, format and save it. So just format and save and refresh, and you see the position switches. So everything could be done from here. You could rearrange everything from here just the way you like. Now also notice that it gives you this UI under the hood, but you could also use your own UI if you want to make things personal, more like if you want to brand your stuff, if you want things to look a particular way, you could just change that. But this works. So let's test and see what is going on here. So in a moment we will be testing what we've built. Yes. It's now time to test. Let's test what we've done and see what's up. Let's see how it works. So the first thing we want to test is that of Google sign in, and all you need to do is click on Google. It should redirect us to the callback redirect that we put in the other time, if you remember. And we want to use this email. Click on it, and it should sign up that email and log the person in automatically. So depending on your reception, it's going to go through some of these processes, communicate with Google, and once it's done, it's back. Now, how do we know that this is logged in, that a person is logged in here? So let's check our database. Okay, let's make sure we are running. So let me get this off. All right, so open this in another terminal. I want to run multiple terminal and do npx Prisma Studio. Hit enter. All right, it's back. So we just wait a while. It loads up some data here before we see. So we're supposed to see one user down here. Okay. We can click on user and see. Let it finish refreshing. Beautiful. Now it's done loading, and you can see that I have one user here. And remember that it's in Jock Samson Ebere that we clicked on that time, so we have this person logged in. Now, how do you sign out? you are also provided with another functionality for you to sign out. So for you to sign out, you just start change the URL. So you have /API/auth/ this time around sign out, not sign in, sign out. So you hit on it, it should redirect you to this button where you can sign out. Hit on sign out, and once it's done signing out, it should return you to the landing page, which is the localhost 3000 page, and that is it. This is how it's supposed to work. Now we can also test out the other ones, like we can test out GitHub. So we still do API auth sign in. This time around, we want to test out GitHub. So let's click on GitHub, and if there is anybody signed into GitHub already, it will ask for authorization to allow GitHub to authorize, stuff like that, and we'll get logged in. Yeah. So once we are done, we will come here and check if we have another user. So we are loading up. Let it refresh and get data from our beautiful. It's here. So we'll have a Boilerplate test. Remember, I told you that I'm using test data for everything I'm doing here, and this is the person that's logged in the database. Sorry, on GitHub, and so we have it now. Yeah. Now you also notice that the session here is 1, which means this person is logged in here. Now the other person, which is in Samson has no session. Reason is we logged out initially before logging in this second person. Now we want to also log out again. We want to log out, hit the sign out button, and we want to do a third sign in. This time around, we want to use the email. This email, we've not used it, so we use the tsendgrid 7 and sign in with email. Now this will send a magic email, a magic link to our email account. So let's go there, and you see it sent us to sign into localhost. So if we did not request this email, we can ignore, but of course we requested this email. So click on sign in, and that should take us to the localhost 3000 landing page. How beautiful. Everything works without stress. So we didn't have to start configuring JWT on our own. We didn't have to start setting up email, password, username stuff. All those things we do with Node.js and come to connect to React. By the way, if you're looking for a full stack authentication for Node.js and React, I have that, and I'll make sure I link it somewhere in the description or also around the video here. So you can check that out and compare it with what we are doing here and see how easy it has become when we decide to use NextAuth. By the way, NextAuth is gradually migrating, and so it might not be providing NextAuth only for Next.js. It could also expand to other frameworks. So let's see what the future brings. But this is beautiful, and this is how to test our application. When we check, let's refresh the user here. We should have 3 email addresses this time around. So we are refreshing, and that is it. We have 3. The tsendgrid, which was the last one, and notice that this other 2 has no session, which means they are not logged in anywhere because we signed out 2 times. And then this one has a session, which is beautiful. That is awesome. And that is it. Next, we will now be looking at the app router. We want to see how we can do this thing with app router, the same authentication that we've just done. After all, I will allow you to decide which one is better. Is it the pages router or the app router? Just maybe leave a comment down there or hit me up on social media so that we have that conversation. So let's move forward. Now, this is going to be the last segment of this tutorial, and this time around we are moving right into the app router auth directory. So we'll be building exactly the same thing we built in the page router auth. We want to build this here, and you see how both of them perform the same thing, but the way we build them is what makes the whole difference. So we'll be navigating into the app directory, Now inside of this app directory, we need to make a folder called API, not AOI, API. Then we want to create another folder called Auth. Now make sure that this folder structure is exactly this way. If not, you'll get an error. Now we need to create another folder, and we want to name the folder NextAuth.js, but not just NextAuth.js. Now it starts with a square bracket and 3 dots, and then we say next auth, close with angular bracket, and hit enter to create that file. Now inside of this, we want to create a file called route.js. Hit enter, and that creates it for us. Now this file or folder structure is very, very important. If you miss this structure, you get an error and it wouldn't run as planned. Now if you have gone through the Next.13 documentation, where we have the app router, you notice that we now have specific way of naming files that are going to expose endpoints, and files that are going to expose pages. So for any file that will expose pages, it has to be page.js, and for any file that will expose endpoints, it has to be route.js. So please check out the documentation for route handlers so that you see the directive over there. Now we want to import a few things for us to use here. Everything we are going to be doing here is basically what we've done here, but you should notice the difference. The difference now is the file structure or the folder structure. Yeah, we have the app directory housing the API, the auth, but notice that we do not have a nextauth.js file here. We instead we have a nextauth folder which houses the route.js file. However, when we come to the page router, we have the auth directory housing the Next.js file. All right. Now, what we are going to be doing in this app router is going to be much the same with what we've done here. So let's open this by the side, and we'll just show you everything side by side. You notice the difference as we build, as we continue building. Let me get rid of this. Okay. So like I told you, everything is almost the same. Just copy from here down here. This is completely the same. So you paste it in here. Scroll up a bit. So you scroll up. Now copy all of this. Paste it in here. Then I'll show you the difference. So when you paste it, now we are not exporting the NextAuth here. So we'll convert this into a regular function. So const handler equal to this. So everything still remains the same. However, down here we export the handler. But you will notice that we are not exporting just the handler. We export this handler as one get, and we export the handler as posts. These are the basic differences. The thing is, in Next.13, we no longer call regular functions in the routes. We either call them get, post, or whatsoever the verb is supposed to be. So a few things have changed. So what's going on here is we are exporting these configurations, and we are giving Next.js access to all the configurations we have here, and telling NextAuth to use those configurations and create our authentication for us. And that is it. That is all you need to do to set up your configurations and set up authentication. Okay, let's test out what we've done. We'll begin by running the local server. We're supposed to run that npm run dev. So we'll open this in the in the browser. All right, so localhost 3000. Now that's working. So we also need to make sure we have access to what's the name? We want to make sure we have access to the database. So npx Prisma studio, so hit enter. Yeah, so I guess we shouldn't have anything inside here. Okay, this means that. All right. Now let's go back and try to access the sign in page. Then sorry, I need to be connected to my Wi-Fi, so just give me a moment. That should be coming up in a bit, so that's cool. So we restart this. Good, so everything is showing up now. The first thing we want to do is to try this one. So this is the email one. Hit send, and let's get the email open. So Gmail, and let's see, did that work? So let's resend. Seems I'm having poor reception here. Okay, send grid. Okay, awesome, it's been sent. So that's what we're checking out. The email is opening up gradually. All right, once we complete this login, we should have a user here. So it's loading up. All right, so there's a new message that just came in. So we hit it and hit on the sign in. So we can close off this one. It's now rerouting us back to the home page, so which means it's successful. If we refresh here, we should have one user. So let's wait a bit. Beautiful, so we have one user at send grid, and it has one session. Beautiful. All right, okay, so let's sign him out, or whoever that is, my test bot. Sign that out, and we'll now test for Google and for GitHub. So let's move to navigate to API auth sign in, and we want to test out this. That is for Google. We can use yes, can use this. And once it routes us back to that homepage, that means it's successful. But we got to confirm that by refreshing our database here to see how many users we have and if they have a session. So you notice that we now have 2 users, and this second one we just logged in has a session which this other person doesn't have. Now we want to test GitHub for the last tests. So we sign out first, so that we're sure that this one is out of the way, and then try to sign in again and sign in, this time around GitHub. And once a person is logged in already, it's going to probably automatically log the person in, or if it's the first time, it could ask for authorization. So like this person has been logged in before, and so there's no point, it just logs the person in. But to confirm, we can refresh this, and we should have 3. So beautiful, have 3, and we have just one session. The other one's 0 session, which shows that everything worked well, and that is beautiful. We've been able to cover a whole lot today. Yes, all right. So that you could see my face again. So we're able to cover a lot from today's tutorial. We've seen the difference between how to do authentication in in app router and in page router of the Next.js framework using NextAuth. So do check out the documentation. I'll leave a lot of documentation down in the description, and I'll link some other helpful resources around the video, so check out everywhere.